Marty, when did you first see this guy on screen?
Well, I think it was some scenes from this boy's life, but it was after Robert De Niro told me, hey, by the way, I'm working with this young kid. He's really good. You should work with him sometime. His name is DiCaprio. And I said, okay, but he doesn't usually, especially at that time, what was that? How many years ago? What was it, 1990?
Oh, God, 1993?
93 or so. Right around that time, it was the last collaboration I did there with the 8th film with De Niro was Casino. So after Casino, it's been different in a sense. So we don't see each other that often and that sort of thing. So it's, for him to recommend somebody out of the blue that way to me on a phone call was something very, very special. But the real thing happened. I hadn't seen Gilbert Grape in a theater, but I happened to catch part of it on television, on one of the film channels. But what was about it, myself and my wife Helen were watching it, and I thought it was a documentary. I didn't think I didn't know. I didn't recognize Johnny. The mother was great. Him. We were amazed by it, and I realized it's actually a film, a fiction film in a sense, a staged film, I should say. And so I then realized, who's that boy? And then we saw the name, and that was the name that De Niro had told me about. And then he made Titanic. Which I had nothing to do with. Okay, let's get that clear. I get seasick. I have nothing to do with it. But at that point, it was a big crossroads in my career. I had made Kundun and Bringing Out the Dead, and both films didn't do very well at the box office at that point, and things were changing, and Mike Ovitz came up to me and said, don't you want to make Gangs in New York? He said, I'm working with these guys, and one of them is Leo DiCaprio, and he says, he happens to like your films. Which is important, because, I mean, it's great to have an actor who wants to work with you. And so they said, do you have the Gangs of New York script? And I said, yes, we did, but actually we didn't. We had some of it. And so we started that way. You came on the set, I think, of Bringing Out the Dead.
Bringing Out the Dead,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about working together in gangs.
Well, we should move on to The Aviator, and you can talk briefly. Is this something you had talked about doing for a while beforehand? And I know there were other Howard Hughes projects and so on and so forth, but did you just have a meeting of minds about this and said we're going to do this? How did it come about?
Well, basically, we had done Gangs of New York. We had a really great relationship working there, and I'd picked up a book, I think when I was 21, about Howard Hughes, and I really became obsessed with playing him. It was the sort of most, fascinating character, I'd come across in a long time, and so I developed a script. Michael Mann actually developed it for a while, and then he went off to do Ali, and I was sitting there with this screenplay, and I remember sending it over to Marty in hopes that he'd be interested in it. And I think the first thing he said, well, look, he doesn't know anything about aviation, but he didn't know anything about boxing either, and he did Raging Bull, so he's going to take a look at it.
I don't know.
So that was encouraging. And
all I know is I'm afraid of both.
and that to me is one of the most nostalgic memories I have of really making a movie. For the first time, having that responsibility of bringing material like this to a director of his stature, and then sort of creating it and doing a makeshift Hollywood in Montreal, rebuilding Grauman's Chinese, the investigation of who this character was, creating this, this sort of fascinating look into his mind through the screening room, and the confinement of that was really a miraculous part of my life. I'd never sort of submerged myself, I don't want to say submerged myself as an actor, but really focused on absolutely nothing for 9 months of my life than that film. I was so dedicated to that process, and because I felt a real responsibility for the movie for the first time. I'd always had a relationship, you grow up in the industry, is the director is your father, you follow your father's lead, you find your own way, but this was the first time I was like, here, Dad, this is something do you like it? Let's work on this together.
Well, after 2 films, now you're a team. Now you've made successful films and great collaboration going on. So are you looking for a third film to do together? How did The Departed come along?
Rick, that's our manager.
Yeah.
How did that? I'm just kidding.
I know. Chris Donnelly actually gave me, it was a stack of scripts. I had to, Aviator did very well. We weren't really looking, we were looking for a third film, but we didn't know what the hell it was. What I wanted to do was a kind of down and dirty B film. I'd had it with Aviator in the sense that, in a good way, it was a spectacle. I wanted to make a spectacle in widescreen and aviation. I'm terrified of flying, so get in there in those planes and and throw yourself into it. And maybe that fear has that energy propels a lot of the, or inspires a lot of the montage, so to speak, of the picture, and the textures of the plane, all that, the sexuality of it, and the mental illness was really, really strong for me. So, having done that, I said, okay, now I just want to free myself and do a picture of these, just this street war, a street war. And I mean, I didn't know that until I read the script that Bill Monahan wrote of The Departed. I was somewhat familiar with Infernal Affairs, but Hong Kong cinema and police are different in different parts of the world. So it's not necessarily very different, but it's a different kind of society in Boston, the Boston police, the New York police, all this kind of thing. And so I just liked the sense of the script. And you'd heard we were going to do it, and you jumped in.
I think it was sent to both of us at the same time. Our manager would clarify that, but I have a terrible memory.
There were a couple of other scripts, too. It was like the actual attack of the real whale that attacked the real whaling ship that Moby Dick is based on, but I all realized I'd never get out of that picture. They'd never, I'd be gone. The boats, they didn't forget it. So, but the thing about it, I would love it, you can't. Sometimes, but the thing about it, this one was like, we could shoot this quickly, it's Boston, and we could make something really strong, and a film that didn't give a damn about anything. Just started right with street violence, racial violence right in the street, the actual footage. A guy being hit with an American flag because he wanted to go to school, And so this is and you sort of at the same time, and then said, you're in, and it all started to develop that way. This is always to do dream scenes. How does one do a dream? And I think what Sir Ben Kingsley mentioned to Michelle one day, he says, she's a ghost. So he said, where'd you come from? In other words, if you're going to go in the scene, usually an actor has to know, well, I just came in from the street, I went up the stairs, I opened the door, and there you were. But we don't show that in film. But where does the ghost come from? Where's she been? And so it's very difficult for actors, I think, to stay in a dream state. And what you did there is so beautiful. It's still very moving to me, this scene. And I designed the shots, and moving and tracking in and into cutting. So who is, but she is. If she's gone, they says, I have to go. And he can't hold on to her anymore. It's always a problem doing a dream scene. I just find probably the most realistic way of shooting, because a dream is very real. But this particular scene had other elements. The ash, the fact that she disintegrates. And so it really, for me, was their faces was the whole thing, their faces. Yeah.